I got you. If y'all need a paper, we got a pamphlet right here. Do you need a?
We're using the same one, right?
Yes, chapter 5. And then after that, I should have, ouch. I think I'll have enough of the chapter 14. I don't know. And we'll be starting with it says temples and rituals. So it'll be the 6th page at the top. Because we're almost done.
We're never done.
We're never done. I know. Ask Roger that. We've been talking about cosmic mountains, temples, gardens, and the way these things all affected the ancient world, basically.
Whenever you're ready. Are you on?
Yeah. We slipped behind you on that one. Some of the verses of cosmic mountains that I wanted to read last week, but I didn't get to read last week, and I think I will read today, and that's out of Isaiah 2 and Ezekiel 47, 1 through 12. So everybody, if you don't know how Isaiah opens up with a vision. God is condemning the children of Israel on their worship, basically. He's telling them, I'm tired of this. I'm tired of all your worships. And I remember when I was doing this in Judaism school or Torah school, whatever we were taught, Haftorah, I remember the rabbi saying the children of Israel could easily look back at God and say, Lord, you gave us all these commandments. But it wasn't about the commandments God was getting on to them about. It's the fact that they weren't doing it with a complete heart, a full heart, a heart of love. They were doing it just as out of ritual. So Yahweh is not a God that wants you just to do something out of ritual. He wants you to do something out of love. He loves you and he wants to love back, basically. But in chapter 2, God tells them about the cosmic mountain of God, and he says this is what Isaiah the son of Amos saw concerning Judah and Jerusalem in the last days. So we're in the last days. The mountains of the Lord's temple will be established, a chief among the mountains. It will be raised above the hills, and all nations will stream to it. Many people will come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us his ways. He'll teach us his ways so that we may walk the paths of his law. We'll go out from Zion, the word of the Lord from Jerusalem. He will judge between the nations, and he will settle disputes for among people. They will beat the swords and the plowshare. If you know anything about the UN, you know the UN has this part right here, quote it. They have it as their main quote. They will beat their swords and the plowshares, and their spears and the pruning hooks. Nations will not take up swords against nation, nor will they train for war anymore. So, and it goes into a whole thing. But the point is that there's a mountain described here, and out of that mountain flows knowledge of God's law and God's ways, and it's higher than any mountain. So the implications would be like this mountain is greater than the Bel mountain and the other mountains that exist in the world, because there's one true God, right? So I like that. And I guess we'll talk about Ezekiel here, Ezekiel 47. In Ezekiel 47, it brings us to the door of the temple, and from there he sees water flowing out. I guess we can read this whole thing. And it says, the river from the temple. The man brought me back to the entrance of the temple, and I saw water coming from underneath the threshold of the temple toward the east. For the temple faced east. The water was coming down from under the south side of the temple, south of the altar. And then he brought me out through the north gate and led me around the outside to the outer gate facing east, and the water was flowing from the south side. As the man went eastward with measuring lines in his hand, he measured off 1,000 cubits. What is a cubit? A cubit is something like 13 inches, give or take. It's right out there a foot, but it's not it's a little bit more, but it's not 2 feet or something like that. It's like right there. Yeah, cubit. I usually I know, and I can't. It slipped my mind. I have notes.
It's not the God with the arch.
No, cubit is usually from here to here.
No, you didn't get that. I said cubit.
Oh, cupid. Oh no, cubic.
My
Cubit.
cubit's longer than your cubit.
Yes, yes. Take devil great is all right. As the man went eastward with a measuring line in his hand, he measured off 1,000 cubits, and then led me through waters that was ankle deep, and he measured off another 1,000 cubits, and led me through waters that was knee deep. He measured off another 1,000 and led me through the waters that was up to my waist. He measured off another 1,000, but now it was a river that I could not cross because the water had risen and was deep enough to swim in the river that no one could cross. He asked me, Son of man, do you see this? Then he led me back to the bank of the river. Then I arrived there, and I saw a great number of trees on each side of the river. He said, this is the water that flows towards the east, the region that goes down to Arabah, where it enters the sea. When it empties into the sea, the water there becomes fresh swarms of living creatures, and will live wherever the river flows, and they will be large numbers of fish, because the water flows there. It makes the salt water fresh. So where the river flows, everything will live. Fishermen will stand along the shore from En Gedi to En Eglam. There will be places spreading nets. The fish will be as many kinds like the fish of the great sea, but the swamps and the marshes will become fresh, and they will be left for salt. Fruit trees of all kinds will grow on both rivers, both banks of the rivers, and their leaves will not wither, nor will their fruits fail. Every month they will bear, and because of the water from the sanctuary flows to them, the fruit will serve for food, and their leaves for healing. So you see that this river of life produces a garden, and it's fresh water. And fresh water, just so you know, in the ancient world, one of the biggest problems is even when you got floods during the flooding season, if it evaporated too fast, it'd leave salt sailing on the fields, then it would damage your fields. They knew about this, so they had ways to. That's why they worked with irrigation, and they tried to make sure they get everything done right. They're very smart people. They understood the cycles of the rivers and stuff like that. So they weren't ignorant of things. So both of them are ones that we see that the garden in Ezekiel 47 is a temple, and the mountain of God is God's throne place. So it's not hard to say that the writer of Genesis kind of had the same view, that the mountain, that God, the garden that he placed man in is a temple, and that man is in place for a special role. Him and Eve are both placed with a special role, the be bringers of mankind, because both names means large group of people. Kava, Eve's name is Kava, and it means something to do with tent or dwelling. And then Adam, of course, means mankind as well as man. So you have inside of them something larger. So that's why some people, when they look at the Genesis, and they do look at it as archetypical, because they're saying, well, this could be archetypical because these could be two things representing something greater, mankind in general. You can read Genesis pretty much either way. It wouldn't offend me any. I know scholars that do, and I have friends that do, and they're just as much as devout. So you don't always have to have like Ken Helm's interpretation or answers in Genesis or anybody like that with me. Because I know that they're guessing just as much as we're guessing. And we're trying to, what we're doing by studying how the other cultures understood their text, understood their writings and their culture, helps us, I think, better understand the Bible. That's why we take so much emphasis on looking at everybody around as well as the Israelites. And as we get more into the Bible and we start reading and going through the Torah, and I say Torah because the Torah is an older book than Isaiah. You got to think Torah's written. If Moses is real, Torah is written around the 1200 BC, versus Isaiah is written around 530 BC. There's a big change in culture by that time, right? You can do word studies. I mean, I've seen scholars do word studies and say that in Genesis, words had slight different meanings than you get in Isaiah just by the way they're used. So there are things like that. So it's not like Genesis is written and the whole Bible came right out there. Genesis was written, or the Torah was written, and the Bible's developed over time, right? So there's going to be change in the way words are used, and there's going to be a change in culture, and then the culture, even the Israelites are going to be impacted by the cultures around them and how they see God and how they worship God. That's just natural. We're impacted that way, right? The way, if you may pick up something I say today and you may take it into your life, guess what? I impacted your life. And you may do the same to me. So we do this all the time. That's why it's great to be in groups and talk about some things, I think. That's why there's no private interpretation of the Bible. You know, it's not just you and your Bible. It's you, your Bible, and the church. Because the body's been around for a long time. So, you want to...
I just heard something the other day on one of the
Yeah.
YouTube channels. I think Wesley Huff, maybe, was saying along the lines of what you said, that different words to say were different way back then, like word fine.
Yeah.
You were talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
And he suggested, somebody asked him what's the best version to read in his mind.
Yeah.
And the girl said, I grew up with King James, so I love King James. He said, there's nothing wrong with King James, it's beautiful. But at the time that was written,
Right.
even then the words have changed. So sometimes on the newer,
Right.
NIV or whatever, it picks up what that word was.
Well, that's like my example. Hebrew Bible word called male, up for the first time. Well, that's translated into refill in the King James Bible. The problem is that the re here does not mean mean yeah, to redo something. So it doesn't mean to redo. But today time, that's how we see re. And ancient times, that's not how they see re because it didn't exist yet. So that compound, that prefix didn't exist in their world. So they're using the word as the Jews use male to fill up for the first time. So refill here means to fill up for the first time. But you read that, and so a guy reads that in the 1800s, and in the late 1800s, refill means to do it again. And then he the whole theory of multiple floods, multiple events happening, and then that impacts the church for a long time, for over 100 years, because there's not a lot of Hebrew scholars or anybody.
So Genesis you think was written what?
So if Moses is real and Ramses the king, Ramses is around 12. He lives around the 1200. It's like 1250, 1200. So he lives around 1200. So if Moses, I'm going to take some further back and put some on Ach Moses. So this is Ramses here. I'm going to butcher his name. Ach Moses. And he lives around, go back 50 years. So I think Ramsey exactly lives, I'm going off of memory, 100%. So Ramsey lives somewhere around 1250, if I remember right. So just go off, 50 years, and I think 1200. So I think he technically lives 2-3 generations. That's 10. So he's going to be back a little bit further. It's going to be, I think he's going to live in like 1300 or 1400. I think he's actually in 1400 is what he put him. So Moses is somewhere in the 1400s. And the reason why that's important is all was a group called the Hyksos. The Hyksos is a Semitic culture that comes out of the Levant while the Egyptians are weak, and they take over the northern city northern city, so they take over the delta. So here's your Mediterranean Sea, and then here's delta, and here's. So you have Thebes here, down here, I can't remember. I think Stockton right here. And then you have like several cities right here on these islands. Well, they take it over, and they take city called Avaris, and they hold out for hundreds of years. And so these kings right here defeating them. Ramsey is the one that Ramsey defeats them, and he renames this. He comes up here and builds Ramses city. So he builds a city called Ramses. And so we know when that Ramses city was created, and we know when it quit being used. So we can then say, if the Hyksos was there, right, and the Bible tells us that they're building their storehouses. They're not building pyramids, they're building storehouses. Storehouses are these big, round, elongated things, so they look like they're grain storage. They're huge. And then they can go deep. So they actually look like this. Shape to them, so they look like a big sitting in the field. And they would build them like that. They would build from they're built from baked brick, right? So they're not built from big stone. They're built from baked brick, and we find a bunch of these.
And that's what
And this is what it says that the Israelites were building for the Egyptians were storehouses. So maybe they also worked on the. I don't know, but there was a palace in Pit Ramses. And that was Ramses the Great Palace. So and you notice Moses' timeline. Moses is always able to go see Ramses doing the events. So that means Moses is living really close. Guess where Goshen is? Well, Goshen is told us in the Bible. It's up in here. So Goshen is right here in the north. So it makes sense now. So because if you put Ramses down here and these other like Moses ruled down. These are days' travels on chariot. A chariot can only be pulled so long by horses, so it's not a horse can reach up to 45. A chariot could, I think, reach up to 45 miles per hour. But a horse doesn't run all day. Like you get in your car, you put it on cruise control, you'll run constantly. Horses don't run constantly. And so I got way sidetracked here, but this is very. It's okay. So it takes days. It took Moses, who doesn't have any transportation apparently. It took Moses days to get up here in the delta. So if Moses was the reigning king, he'd been down here. So for them to go here to here, it would have took days. And so what you're doing, you're just looking at the evidence in the Bible, and you're reading it. People reads it different. A lot of people love this Moses because his name is Moses, right? Well, Moses is an Egyptian name. It's used constantly. In Hebrew, we call Moses Moshe, and in Egyptian it's Messi, Mesis or something like that. So but you're going from two different languages, so you can't go off the Hebrew there and say this is, and then build a root word off the Hebrew because it's not a Hebrew word, right? It is a Egyptian word meaning to draw out. So anyway, so that's the evidence that we have in the Bible. So you have the storehouse being built in this area. We have the Ramses being built during his reign, which now you got a time. Now that destroys this to me because you say, well, if Ramses exists here, the city of Ramses didn't exist here, but it exists when Ramses the II, just so y'all know. So then doing Ramses the Great or Ramses II, and it's no longer used after that because I think he's a usurper. So Ramses III is a usurper, and that's a general's son who's just trying to link his son back. Because what you want to do, if you usurp the power of a dynasty or a family group, you have to prove that you are chosen either by the gods or you have some kind of connection to great. And so Ramses the Great, it's in the title. So Ramses the Great is the great. And so the father of the general, I'm pretty sure he was a general, he was a vizier or one of them. When he named his son Ramses III, he took the throne and names himself Ramses III. What he's trying to do is connect back to Ramses II. And when we know Ramses II was a liar, he liked his reason not really have his. Kelly. So anyways, so all you're doing is you're using deductive reasoning. You're saying if the city doesn't exist until Ramses the Great, then the Bible mentions the city Pit Ramses. Then when the Jews were there? Well, the olive was underneath one eye. but it only exists, the city only exists on one time. So the Torah probably so by Moses, because Moses ain't getting the Torah yet, right? The Torah doesn't happen until they're in the desert. So be a year 2, right? So leaves though during grand year because he goes out 40 years. If you want to accept the 40. Now 40 is a symbolic number. So you got 3 40s there. So Moses is running around the desert like what, 180 years old or 120, 120 years old. I mean, God can do it. I don't have a problem with that, but more than likely these are symbolic numbers. Setting up 40 is completion. 50 is jubilee. So 40 is like I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but it's something to do with ratifying the issue, right? It's the trial's over. 40 years in the desert, you reach 40, the trial's over, right? So that's how 40 works. So it's a trial number. It's a number that's based off a trial. So you can say Moses had many trials in his life. Is Moses 120 walking around the desert? Well, that's, if you want to believe that, you can believe that. I don't have a problem with that. I don't care.
How long were they living to at that time? Had they started?
Well, we don't know. The way culture kept time is not the way we kept time. And they didn't sit around and birth years and all that. They didn't have, a lot of these concepts they had were based off of rulers. So usually you would say he lived for the 40th year of the reign of Moses the 14th or whatever. I'm just making up names. And that's usually how you did it. What we do now is we try to figure out, like if you're trying to figure out when Ramses lived, you look at his treaties, who did he write to, and then you figure out some kingdoms kept better record. Egyptians have a pretty good record, but we don't have a lot of their records because they wrote it on paper. So since they had the secret weapon called paper, we don't have that stuff falls apart. So what then you do, you say, well, who did Ramses write to, or who dwelled around Ramses, and you get stone walls. So a lot of you get off the Egyptians off their walls, their monuments, and so then you shoot over to the Middle East and you go to Hattusos, and you realize that Hattusos, they write on stone in cuneiform, and stone never goes away. Stone's harder than brick. You can break someone's noggin with the tablets. And so then you find them there, and then you link them to other kings, and then you go around. That's how you link where they're at. So then you say, going backwards, 12 BCs is backwards, right? You start at 0. BC is the day before 1 AD. That makes sense? In this, you're going this way in the BCs, and this, you're going that way. 1250 BC is 1250 years before AD. So you're going that way. So that's all. So then you say, well, who established AD and BC? In fact, if you read scholars, a lot of even secular scholars still use the BC and the AD. A lot of scientists, the CE and then they like to beat the BCE before Common Era, and then they got then you got those times of like the before stage. So anyway, that's way lost what we were talking about, but now you know something there. I guess it's not no big deal. So if you want to start with page 6 on temples and rituals. That wasn't too far down the rabbit trail.
Good stuff.
Yeah, I think it's interesting. I wish I keep my head sometimes. I try to keep it at least close enough. So we have to use roundabout numbers. I apologize for that, but we can go over that. I do want to go over all that. I think all these things are essential. The Bible's basically, I think, treating the Bible like a history book and then using it as a history book, more than a science book, and then understanding how people understood time. They read time differently. I don't personally think you can add up the names in the Bible and get to a 6,000-year Genesis. You can fire me if you want to now. I think it's lineage. It has to do with lineage and the way they understood tribal importance and stuff like that. And so when I read the names in Genesis, I think of it like apostolic succession, right? The whole point is not to get everybody word for word. We know that the Bible, the Genesis genealogy is not in the Masoretic text. We know it's not word for word. How do we know that? Because we have older books called the Septuagint, or the Old Greek writing. It's not all called the Septuagint, but the Old Greek. And in the Old Greek, We have an older copy. We have a 150 to 200 year copy older than the Qumran Codex. So the oldest copy of the Bible we actually have is a Greek text. So that's crazy. Okay. And in that genealogy, if you compare it to the Masoretic text, it's different. So the genealogy in your Bible is Masoretic, right? It's a Masoretic text. It's different than the Septuagint text. And that's different in the Qumran text. So here now we have a problem, right? So when James Hustler, or Hyssop, whatever his name is, the Bishop Usher, when Bishop Usher did his genealogy, which is one of the big impact books that I just gave my copy to Mike. When he did his time date and he got 4004 BC, right? When he did that, he did it off of the Masoretic text. We didn't have the Septuagint. We didn't have the Septuagint, at least in England, we didn't have the Septuagint. It did exist. It exists in copy format in the Byzantine world, in the Greeks, because they use it. That's their main copy, their book they use. And so they had more genealogy. And so he used the Masoretic text because of the inspiring of the Masoretic text was deemed by Luther and the Reforms as the true Bible. And that helped them get rid of the Apocrypha. Like Martin Luther didn't like the Apocrypha. So it gets rid of the Apocrypha. Now the original King James Bible had the Apocrypha in it. Most ancient Protestant books had the Apocrypha, and we're the ones that call it the Apocrypha. They call it the Bible. So that's where that comes from. So we called it Apocrypha, we put it in the middle of the Bible, and then we went about our days. But we used the Masoretic text, and so there's genealogies that's in the Septuagint, not in the genealogy. So that changed the date of creation. You see the problem with that? It changes. So if you did the numbers, if Usher does the numbers again with the new information, we just add it, then he's not going to get 4004 BC. And I think most young earthers or what, everybody gets 4004 BCE. I'm going to tell you the Bible ain't trying to tell you that. The Bible don't care. It doesn't care about when the earth started. All it's talking about, what the point of the Bible is worship, is religion, it's faithfulness. It's theology. So the Bible ain't trying to give you a special time of creation at all. And so that's why it's not. So what the Bible, I think the genealogy is trying to do is give you apostolic Adam. Adam's the high priest. These are the people who are in line of Adam who are keeping the faith and the best way they can keep them. So these are the people flowing that are able to keep the faith. And we know that don't go well until Noah, right? Noah, the party's already crashed by Noah comes along. And then there's a flood and all these people are dead, all these watchers and these, whatever you want to call them, these Nephilims, they're all dead, right? Or at least they died. We don't know what happened to the spiritual. And most ancient cultures that believe the Nephilim believe that when the Nephilim, the bodies died, their spirits lived, and that's what became demons and different spirits and stuff like that. So from there, Noah comes off the boat. He has 3 sons, and then they're continuing the line of faithfulness, because Noah obviously. Now there's no Torah. Is there a Torah? No Torah? We don't know. We know that they have some kind of traditional laws. They're probably passing on some cultural things to pass on. Then they spread out from there, and then it just gets watered down from there. So that's how you're looking at it. So the point of the Bible is showing you these are the people that are going back to Adam. This is my opinion. You don't have to agree. These are the people going back to Adam that are faithful to what God has established. And even then, we get down to one man, Noah, which means to rest. And then we get his children, and even his children doesn't seem. I mean, right out the boat, we already got problems, right? So we're one generation off the boat, we're already having issues, where the kids are doing crazy stuff and being cursed and all that. And then what happens after that? The next holy guy is Abraham. So if we pretend like that you could date it, then you're talking about 4,000 years to 1,000 years before you get the next righteous man, and that's Abraham. And Abraham is opposed against a man named Nimrod, right? You get Nimrod's story and then Abraham's story. Anyway, so yeah. So I would say you read the genealogies, you read them with the fact that's God, that's people keeping the ways of Adam, even though they're still being corrupt. Does it make sense? In other words, not 100%. keeping the ways, but they're doing the best they can until we get to Noah, and then Noah's children continues that, and then the Shemites continue it, because we get that's why all of a sudden the Shemites become the important people, because Abraham is a Shemite, right? So Shem comes off the boat, and he becomes the righteous son, basically. He becomes the heir. That's the importance of him. So you had this firstborn thing, right? How many was here when I talked about the firstborn? The firstborn doesn't mean you're the firstborn. It just means you're the heir. And so Shem becomes the firstborn. And most rabbis don't even think doesn't think Shem's the firstborn. He just thinks he becomes the heir. They think, I think Ham is the firstborn, or the other one, Jebusite, or whatever his name is. Anyway, so you get Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And then Japheth is European, right? If you're going off the Bible, Japheth would be Europeans, and then the Shemites would be all the Semitics, and then the rest would be Hamites. So the Egyptians would be Hamites and stuff like that, and Canaanites would be Hamites and all that. Genealogy tells us different, just so you know. If you look at genealogy, Canaanites are Hamites according to the Bible, but Canaanites are actually Shemites. They have the same blood type as the Jews. So what's going on there? So think of it like this when you're reading the genealogies and someone comes to you and they tell you that the genealogies don't match up with the genealogies that we're here in the Bible, the nations, they don't match up with modern day genetics. Well, that's because they're not using modern day genetics. They're using religious practice. So the Canaanites worship like the Hamites. Whatever the Hamites worship, they worship closely like the Hamites. Therefore, they're Hamites. The Shemites worship like the Shemites, closely like the Shemites, so they're Shemites. So it's probably based off of their worship, how they worship and how they name their gods.
More from worship
than from actually who they're from.
Your DNA.
Yes. So it's a religious text.
That makes sense.
So that's why they're doing it. The Canaanites are cursed, right? Ham knows his father naked. And we're getting way off, but Ham knows his father nakedness, but this is important, so I'll tell you. Ham knows his father naked. What do you mean by know? The word there for know is yodea, and so you can know in two ways. You can know somebody or you can know somebody. So to know your father nakedness means two things. Either he saw his father naked or he laid with his mom. That's your two options you have there by most scholars. So you have two options. But then then it's not even Hamite that gets cursed, it's Canaanite that gets cursed. Canaan gets cursed, not Ham. So a lot of scholars say that even though it's mentioned Ham, it's probably not Ham. It's probably the tribe of Ham laid with their mother or saw their father's nakedness or knew their father's nakedness. The language is very important there because to know something. Adam knows his wife.
Right.
Same word.
So you don't think he would know his dad like that?
It could be. We could throw that, but usually the nakedness means something you possess, and you possess your wife. So that's the reasoning in that. Wives were more property of man. Y'all didn't have third wave feminism. You didn't have civil rights. I can't even believe women read. I just messed it. Anyways, we got way off there.
It is what it was.
Yeah, it is what it is.
It is what it is.
Yeah.
We can't change it.
Yeah, you can't change it. It's just the way they saw these things.
It is what it was.
But in Guy's defense, we died for y'all. Okay?
Yes.
Yes.
We were almost always dying.
Yeah.
Or finding up new ways to die. You don't believe it? Just hang out with Bubba for a while.
Hold my beer.
Yeah, hold my beer. Watch the last famous words about. All right, let's get into this. So temples and rituals on chapter 6. Yeah, go ahead.
And this just came to me. Even though we were property, it doesn't mean we weren't important.
Oh, yes,
Oh, yeah.
indeed.
You mean
Yes.
women?
Very important.
Yes.
Well, y'all have a whole book written about men fighting over y'all. Helen of Troy.
Yes.
Mm.
So we were still important.
Very.
Yeah.
So
Well, women were. That's why women fought for first wife back in the day.
The first church. What did you be careful? Especially the first church, women really, and still are today,
Yes.
in the third world countries, the ones that are trying to keep the church going.
Yes. Well, if we left it to men, men would have drunk themselves out to death a long time ago in the bar. when I was a child, no men being at revivals, but all women being at revivals. So yeah, I think there's a,
Talk about importance, who first, was it a male or a female who first saw Jesus after his,
all right. Hold on now. I'm just messing. I don't care either way.
She loved him though.
Yeah.
She loved him so.
Oh, yeah, no, but
She got to see him first.
yeah,
Those who are forgiven for much, love much, right?
Yes,
So,
indeed.
but we got to get on because now we only have 30 minutes. We went on that rabbit trail. I wanted to finish this. So, temples and rituals, we start right there. It's on page 6.
sorry.
The God's needs were not cared for just so that the people would be graced with good harvests. The temple was the control center of the order in the cosmos, and that order had to be maintained. The deity needed to be cared for so that his or her energies could be focused on the important work of holding the forces of chaos at bay. The rituals, therefore, served not simply as gifts to the deity, but mechanical liturgical words and action. The rituals provided a means by which humans could play a role in maintaining the order in the cosmos. Priests were the specialists who possessed the knowledge and responsibilities for ensuring that access to sacred space was protected and that rituals were properly performed. The god's privacy needed to be guarded and his needs met so that he could be about the cosmic business. Creation was renewed and maintained through the various rituals and ceremonies. Egyptians' thinking attached this function not only to the role of the priest, but also to the role of the king. In Egypt, priests operated only by authority delegated from the king, who had the sole right to perform the rituals of the cult. It was his task to complete that was unfinished and preserved the extent, not as a status quo, but as continuing, dynamic, and revolutionary process of remodeling and improvements. Thus, in the rituals observance, the order of the cosmos not only was maintained, but was transferred to society, resulting in political and social order. Quote, the royal performance of the occult, generally speaking, invoked the sacred power for preservation of Ma'at and the order of the world. Assman summarizes the system well. The world was maintained is a world of meaning, of language and knowledge, of relation and reflection, an anthropomorphic reading of the universe with corresponding cosmic morphic images of human order. The hourly ritual bands cosmic chaos with the chaos in man himself. Sacrifice played an important role in the system. Since it provided food for the gods, it is arguably the most important provision to sustain their presence, favor, and smooth operation of the cosmos. Conventions for the transference of food to the divine realm varied from cultic to cultic, from formal presentations of the offering on a stand or some sort of ritual of destruction. Beckman places the Hittite practice in later categories. The general principle underlying Hittite's offering technique was that the material presented had to be destroyed in whole or in part in order to pass over to the intended recipient in a parahuman world. Thus, liquids were poured out on the ground, offering tables or altar. Breads were broken or crumbled. Vessels were smashed. Animals were killed. How did people or priests discern what rituals were satisfying, which would satisfy the gods? Israelites believed that Yahweh had revealed to them what he expected. But in the ancient Near East, there was no such revelation, which we spoke on that already. The Torah is very special when it comes to in the ancient world. Lacking such revelation, people and the priests were left to deduce what might please the god. For that, they depended on the knowledge of what would please the king. Kings wanted to be treated with the highest respect, recognized for their pleasing, right here. Dependent on the knowledge of what pleases the king. Kings wanted to be treated with the highest respect, recognized for their greatness, and pampered in every way. It was logical to conclude that God's desire the same only more. When that did not seem, that is, when all possible rituals recourse had been followed, and still evidence pointed to an angry God, they could only guess might. If it involved the ritual of slaughter of animals, other typical foodstuff include grain products, dairy products, baked goods, fruit, eggs, and varied of liquids, from beer, wine, to milk, to honey or oil. When animals were offered, they tended to be the domesticated animals that had a role of economy. In Mesopotamia, bulls and sheep were common, but offerings also included birds, fish, and bandicoot rats. Pigs and dogs would typically be offered only to the chthonic deities and offering to the dead. Okay. In Egypt, meat was not a common element in the sacrificial ritual, but it was present in most other cultures. In most cases, the meat then became the basis for feasts shared by the deity, the offering priest, and the worshiper. The parts given to the deity varied. Hittite practice shows some similarities to Israelite rituals. The gods preferred the fat and those grains thought to be seat of life. Probably seat of life there. Emotion, liver, and heart above all. Yes, your emotions in your liver is what they used to think. It's crazy. They thought everything derived from the stomach in this area. So the heart was here to them. Even though they knew what the heart was, they cut animals open all the time. They knew what these things were, I guess. But so probably. Above all, the gallbladder and the kidneys, the entrails were roasted over the flame, chopped and served to the recipient on bread. The remainders of the carcass was dismembered, cooked as a stew, and shared by the humans. In all these areas, we can see that the actual ritual practices show some degree of communality. I don't know why I get that word wrong. Across the ancient world, including Israel. Likewise, the role of ritual as undergirding the smooth operations of the cosmos in securing the favor and the presence of the deity is everywhere evident. The main difference seen in the cognitive worldview of Israel concerned the extent to which Yahweh had needs that were met by rituals, or the way in which the giving of a gift influenced the deity. At the same time, we should not think that the main role of sacrifice was to deal with sin. Israel's clearing sacrifices addresses impact of sin on sacred space as they expunged contaminations, but they had many other sacrifices designed to direct their worship towards Yahweh. Look at that, you finished. We finished. These are yours if you want to keep them. Go back and read them or up here if y'all want them. Any questions on anything we just read? I think I got enough. I don't. Where I made a bunch of these, I don't know what to do with them. I'm going to hand it up. We got a few minutes. We're going to start Israel's worship now.
Can I ask a question about the films Michael Hyde's original sin?
Yeah, let's see if I can answer it.
So the question I have, and it might be a stupid one, is Jesus a descendant of Adam or David?
Jesus? Yeah, he's called the. So David is the righteous king. I'm gonna give her one here. I guess. So Jesus is the son of Adam, right? Which is also called the son of man, right? Or Adam, or Adam, depending on which language you go here. And so the reason why he's connected to David is David is given the promise of the Messiah, or the root to death. And so at the same time, he's the son of both of them. So Jesus is technically the second Adam in our theology, because where Adam failed as high priest, Jesus takes the mantle. So this is where it gets, some people get confused with this. So Jesus is the firstborn of the resurrection. So the firstborn of the resurrection is the firstborn. So in ancient culture, he becomes the firstborn. We're going back to the firstborn concept. So now that he's the firstborn, he is born in the new covenant, right? The death, and then born into the new, because he's establishing a new covenant with his death and resurrection. Once the resurrection, we leave the old covenant, we enter into the new covenant. Therefore, he's the firstborn, works as a high priest, because high priest or chief, be the side or the father, things wrapped up. He used the firstborn as his heir to take priest and king. Adam worked as high priest and king upon earth because he was the firstborn on earth. Jesus is the firstborn in the resurrection, firstborn in the new covenant, firstborn in the new world to come. Therefore, now he works as high priest and king. He just does it in the heavenly. So Jesus is both the son of Adam and the son of David in that way. Because that's how it works. Does it make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, it's just theology terms, basically. We got a few minutes, so this is the pamphlet. I hope you take these home. If you don't, come back to me. But I would look at them when you get time because they're. So you got scriptures at the top. This is Israelite. I'm going to try to kill some time for a minute.
Going to be for next Sunday?
Yeah, this is next Sunday. So we have. We got 10. Wait. Again, and we'll just go where we're going. Israelite prayer and worship. So this is actually Israelite worship. I dropped the prayer thing because the prayer would have made this just and I did. And I'm doing this all on my own budget, so I cut some corners here. I do want to go over the prayer and worship, but we are going to go over these scriptures at the top so go ahead and start reading these scriptures at the top because these are going to be your focal points. This is the scenes. Behind the no. This is reading the Old Testament in its context. That's what it's called. And it deals with death. It deals with worship. We kind of went over already. We were talking about. I think we did here, didn't we? We can go over again. I don't care. I like these concepts. We could do this. We could just go over this stuff again. Anyways, trying to get the stuff on camera so then I go back and look at it and criticize myself and then try to fix some things I criticize myself on. So Israelite worship, it says our main scriptures, of course, would be 1 Kings 5 and 8, the temple building and that, Leviticus 1 and 5, and we will cover these Psalms 8. But let's start right here where it says development of Israelite worship. So this is going to take us right out of their temples into the temple of Yahweh. So I thought that's why I was trying to connect these two together, because I knew we spent two package on rituals there, so I figured this would be bring us in. And from here, I actually want to bounce. I want to do an overview of Leviticus, so that's why it's going to. So then one day we'll make it back to that. When we make it back to John, we're just going to restart John because most of y'all weren't here when we got to. And Roger's he'll suffer through with us. Development of Israelite worship. The cultic aspects of Israel's worship can be divided into 4 periods or stages. The first covers the early period associated with the patriarchs. A second describes the Yahweh's faith established under Moses and carried down through the tribal periods until the time of David. The third stage runs from the building of the temple under Solomon until its destruction and the people's exile in 586 BC. That's, of course, Nebuchadnezzar. Finally, a fourth covers the new form of renewed cultic and worship period after the exile. From the beginning to David. This describes Abraham stopping at the Oak of Vision in Shechem, where God appeared to him, Genesis 12:6. They built another shrine at the Oak of Mamre near Hebron, Genesis 13:18, and then at Ai, Genesis 12. Still later, he plants a tamarisk tree near the altar in Beersheba, Genesis 21:33. His son Isaac worshipped in the same places as Jacob dedicates another memorial to Yahweh with a stone at Bethel, and it commemorates his vision of the latter in Genesis 28:12 through 13. Much later, Joshua set up a memorial stone too. Yahweh at Gilgal. Commemorate the victory crossing the Jordan River to conquer the promised land. These shrines at sacred places where an ancestor had worshipped God or experienced special visions were often associated with trees or groves. And I'm going to tell you right now, that was common. Abraham is doing nothing unique in the common world, in the world. These oaks of memory, the oaks vision at Shechem, these were all sites used by other people, not just people who worship Yahweh. All right? So you know that.
And the Tamarisk, is that where we get turmeric? Not turmeric.
This is as good as mine. We can, yeah, sure. Not just messing. Special mountains also play important roles, which we just read, right? Genesis 22 relates the story of readiness to sacrifice Isaac on Mount Moriah, identified later in Chronicles 3:1 as Jerusalem, of course, and of course the most important revelation of all, the covenant on Mount Sinai. Stories share a common respect for sacred trees, springs, and mountains as places in which encounter. The people mostly identify their God shrines, for example. Baal had a home at Mount Sephon on the southern coast of Syria. And of course, for Baal, this would be a cosmic mountain. Right? Syria. Nomadic tribes, on the other hand, regularly worship their tribal gods at any place that was so imposed or strange that it seemed to be filled with a mysterious presence of the god. I don't know, I've been in the woods before and you just walk into something like, whoa, something's here. You know, you ever had that? The Israelites' tradition remembers the patriarchs referring to their God as the God of the fathers, a name that their God, Yahweh, was more associated with the people of a clan than with any one place. They did not localize Yahweh at one shrine, but honored in place that he chose to meet them, where he caused his name to dwell, as language in Deuteronomy puts it. Deuteronomy 11, 21, 14, 23 through 16, and then 2 and 6 verses. The patriarchal stories also reveal many different names for God. The name Yahweh was revealed to Moses by God at the burning bush, Exodus 3. Some traditions, but according to another important tradition, the Yahwehist, it was revealed to all humans in the pre-flood era, Genesis 4:26. The tradition agrees, however, the name Yahweh was revealed to Israel indelibly linked to the special saving event of Exodus from Egypt, names such as El Shaddai, Genesis 17, Fire of Isaac, Genesis 31, the Bull of Jacob, Genesis 49:24, were all associated with certain areas of the country and may originated to tribal for their individual God. Let me stop there. Let me talk about that, what we just read there for a minute. So there's a theory in biblical study called, and I went over this many times, or talked about it many times, so they break the Bible up into the Yahwehist section, the Elohimist section. So the first time Yahweh is mentioned is in the verse they give you there. Genesis, where was it? Genesis 26, right? So it does appear there, Yahweh. Well, most think that's anachronistic. When they were copying the Bible to get the books, that they placed Yahweh there because they knew that this Elohim was Yahweh. And a lot of scholars then call this the Yahwehist Codex, where they put, wherever you see Elohim, they put Yahweh. And that is because if you watch Michael Heiser, you know that Elohim can mean multiple things, multiple disembodied beings. It doesn't just mean God. It can mean a ghost. It can mean a demon. It can mean all kinds of things. So anything that has no body, that moves around like a spirit being can be a Elohim or El, right? So it's just the way Exodus 3 reads, because he says, who shall I tell them? He says, tell them that I am sent you. And that's when we get the I am that I am, right? So a lot of scholars says, well, the children of Israel seem not to know who Yahweh is, right? They don't know the name Yahweh. They seem to know him at least by God. And there's some oldest Semitic writing is there at a stone quarry, and we find the name El there carved into the wall. So whoever was carving, it's the oldest El we have, and whoever's carving there carved El. Now again, we're dealing with Semitic cultures. Everybody called their god El. So that doesn't mean these are Hebrews. I'm just being honest with you. That just means it's El. But there's no other evidence of Yahweh. And so Yahweh seems to appear in Exodus 3, and so what they would say is that all the earlier readings of Yahweh is anachronistic. In other words, they were names that they knew that this was Yahweh, so they just wrote Yahweh there. And so then you break down Genesis into the Yahweh and the Elohim codex. So that's the theory. So that's called the JDP theory. The Jehovah theory. So you have one codex that's Jehovah, one codex that's Elohim, one codex is the P means priest, so the priesthood had their little codex. So what they think is as the families came together and became one tribe, these multiple 12 tribes came together and became one tribe, that they brought their traditions and then they put it all into the book and then they edited it all together. Why not edit out the things you don't like? I don't know. That's my problem. I would have been like, well, we have to edit out these things we don't like. But I guess I didn't think about that. I guess they wanted to correct things and leave things. I don't know. I don't believe in the theory. I don't believe that's how it works. I think as time progresses, you have scholars trying to explain to people who are away from a culture. They're trying to, they have the information, but they're trying to get that information to the masses. And so what they do, they edit here and there, and they update names. And I don't have a problem with that. So if you have a problem with that, I don't know what to tell you. There's a door. But if you have a problem, if you don't have a problem with that, then it's what it is, right? People are going to update things. We update maps all the time, so think of it like that. Manhattan used to have a different name to it, right? There used to be several cities in New York, right? There was 2 cities that New York gobbled up, right? I can't remember the name of the cities, but if you go back and read your colonial times, you'll see that that New York was a small town. There was another small port town. New York grew, and it kind of gobbled up the other port town. So there you go. And guess what we did? We updated maps. That's why most of us don't even know about the name. I don't know the name of the town. I just know it happened. So you have to go back and look at the map, right? So if you were here now, like you're 100 years later, and you forgot about the city, and someone tells you go up there by City John there or City Jim. And you go up to City Gym, and you're like, where's City Gym? This is New York.
And are there some maps that show the world being flat?
Well, yeah. There's some maps. Roger says all maps are flat.
That was for Roger.
Yeah.
Even though he's not here.
Yeah. But you can read it for what it's for. You can read it how it is. How I read these things, I'm just telling you how I read. You don't have to. I think they're just updates. As time progressed, people forgot what things were called or things were saying. And so they give you little updates. And you see it throughout the Bible. It's this place is called this to this day. Well, we live in a way, from whoever wrote that, we are way out of their culture. So we don't know even where that city is to this day. That don't mean nothing to us. And so as they were able to, I think they updated things, they update information. So I think that's how you would read that. So I don't believe in the JD theory. Things time was updated and things were corrected. And manuscripts tear up and you fix manuscripts. So, and I think what they did, they edited because they wanted something. Because the way the way the Israelites saw this was that this was sacred text. You don't mess with sacred text.
Right.
So, remember that. And we're over.